Hello, my name is Stacy Sylvester. I'm with The Human Experience. We have been making videos that are both authentic, very genuine, and based on our own human experiences in life on life's terms. Here for the last couple of months, just trying to reach out to people who may or may not be able to get in and see us in person, but to really connect to families, to connect to men, to connect to women, to just let people know that they're not by themselves, and that everybody has a story. And it's kind of been a really awesome journey so far. And so I've been reaching out very specifically to people that I know have a story, have something to share, and can really lead by example and lead by light. So today I have Miss Brandi with me. Brandi has come with me to a variety of different schools throughout Bullitt County, and I think she's been to some in Nelson as well, and spoke to our kiddos. We've seen 6th graders through 12th graders. We have definitely done a lot of service work in that area. Brandi has always touched somebody, and we can talk about a lot of different stories and different times that kids have approached her, and maybe she can bring that up in part of her kind of presentation. So welcome, Brandi, to The Human Experience. We are honored to have you.
Thank you.
So I thought that maybe just to kind of kick us off a little bit, we were talking right before we started taping. We've known each other coming on 3 years now, and a lot has changed in the last 3 years. And so I kind of want to just turn the floor over to you, just because I think that you have a really powerful message to share. So the floor is yours, Brandi.
Thank you, Stacy. Like Stacy said, my name is Brandi. I have over 2 years of sobriety. My sobriety date is 3/10 of 2018. I have a home group through AA, and it's called the Caution Light. I also have a sponsor. Her name is Leah. And so a small part of my story, first and foremost, I think that almost anybody in addiction or any kind of major, addiction or whatever, we all have some sort of trauma in our past. And I am not exempt from that. I have quite a bit of trauma growing up. I was a foster child. I grew up a ward of the state. So I didn't really have, parents. I had my foster parents. Prior to that, however, I was in and out of group homes. And then prior to that, I lived with, seems like every single family member of mine. I felt very alone growing up. I felt like my mother hated me. She put me into foster care when I was 13 years old. After, I'd had some major trauma happen. And, like I said, a lot of women especially go through abuse, and I endured abuse a lot. So anyhow, my mother kind of turned her back on me. I think the first time I went into foster care was 3 years old. And like I had said before, the one thing I remember the most is that my brother was sitting next to me crying, and I knew that my mother wasn't around anymore. So, and through this process, one major thing is that I have learned is, I had issues, and so did my mother. Mm-hmm. And so I have learned to accept those things, even though it took me a long time to get there. And I'm not going to lie, I still fight with it sometimes. But it has helped me to forgive her. Mm-hmm. My own situation with my own kids, of course, has helped me forgive her, because it made me understand a little more. But yeah, so I went through a lot growing up, and I felt very alone, very alone. I was, Sure. And so anyhow, I don't really want to get into a whole lot of it. So I was abused. But after that, foster care was hard. I did end up with 2 very, very good foster parents. I was very lucky. They were older people. I thought they were ancient, but and I had very strict rules. In order to date me in high school, you had to sign a piece of paper. You had to show your driver's license. You had to give the address of where you was at or where your house was, and and the address of where I was going. You had to sign a paper saying you wouldn't take me out of the state. I mean, just on and on and on and on.
Wow.
So it wasn't easy to date in high school. It just wasn't. However, I did manage to get pregnant. So I got pregnant at the age of 16 years old. I gave birth to my daughter at 17. And I was married there shortly after. It wasn't a bad relationship. However, you know, I was so young. I was really, really young. And so that ended pretty quickly. About 6-7 months later, something like that, that ended. And then at the age of 19 years old, I got married again. And I got married to my second husband, whom I was with for a long time. However, it was very, very abusive. The first time, I had 3 children. My first son was died at birth. And after that, I believe my ex blamed it on me. And so I was beaten a whole lot, and he was drinking even more. So every time he would drink and he would come home, I would be the punching bag. I was thrown through a door one time, one of them glass doors. I was thrown through that and it broke all over me. I had my finger broken. I had my nose broken. Daily abuse because the drinking became daily. When he wasn't drinking, it was a little different. However, he still had that hate look in his eyes, if that makes sense. And so I endured that a lot. But, you know, I had a beautiful son out of it, my second son, and he was wonderful. I used to get threatened all the time that if I left, I'd never see my kid, or, you know, it was that kind of mental abuse that goes along with it. And so I stayed and I stayed and I stayed. And then finally, one night, he had come home from the bar, and my son was laying on the couch, and when he slammed the door, it jarred my son, and he blamed it on me for having my son on the couch. So I got my son back to bed, and I came back out, and he grabbed a knife. When I was coming down the hallway, he had grabbed a knife, and he put it to my throat, and told me he wanted to kill me, and used, you know, a lot of other words with it. And so my ex-husband's 6'4", like over 300 pounds, and I'm always been really tiny. So I dropped to the ground. It was kind of my final straw, you know, like I had had enough. I'd had enough black eyes, enough busted lips. My teeth got knocked out. It was really bad. So I dropped to the ground, and he had these basketball shorts on, you know. So I put my hand up in the basketball shorts, and needless to say, I grabbed on for dear life. So that brought him to his knees. After that, you know, the cops were called. This time, I went to jail, and it was my first experience ever with being incarcerated.
Wow.
And so I went to jail that time.
How old were you at that time, Brandi?
Huh?
How old were you at that time?
I was probably 20 or 21, maybe. I was still young. Yeah. No, that's not true. That's not true. I was, probably 24, 25.
Okay.
Take it back. I was 24, 25. However, that was kind of my last straw, you know. Well, it was my last straw. Well, the cops were called, and I got locked up. And because he had the marks on him this time, it wasn't me. Well, so I went to jail, and I stayed in jail overnight. And actually, it was the only time that, you know, like my mom's the one that came, my biological mom's the one that came and got me out of jail and stuff that go around. Well, that time. But I think even after that, though, it was kind of like she was, I don't know. I was a problem child for her, I think. But anyhow, so I went to jail, and God rest her soul. But Judge Rebecca Ward, I went in front of her, and she dismissed my charges right then and there, and looked at my ex and said she doesn't want to see him in her courtroom again, because she had seen me so many times before. So anyhow, the cop that drove me to jail that night had told me, because he'd been out to my house several times before, and told me, if you don't leave him, he's going to kill you.
Wow.
And so I finally took out a final EPO, because there had been several before, but I took out an EPO, and I followed through with it. with the immense fear that I would never see my son again. So because that was a huge thing, his mother even looked at me one time and said, you know, if something happens and he hurts you and you go to the jail or go to the courts about it or whatever, I'll tell them that you beat up on him.
Wow.
And so kind of like it wasn't just him, it was his whole family.
Mm-hmm.
You know, kind of like it put a lot of fear in me. So which is why, and I know a lot of people say, well, why do you stay? Well, here's the thing, you never know what somebody's been through. You never know that situation until you've lived it.
Sure.
And for several reasons, fear, and I didn't want to lose my kid. So anyhow, I left from there, you know, and oddly enough, the cop that told me that, I had a thing with, I can't believe I'm getting ready to say this, but anyhow, I was married 3 times. And so the third husband happened to be that police officer's son.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, that was a good relationship though, you know, that I ruined that relationship. I had been in a really bad car accident, and this is where my abuse comes in with drugs and alcohol. Mm-hmm. Because I never really had done any major partying before that, because I was taking care of my kids and taking care of the husband that was always out drinking. So I started to live a little, I guess. I had custody of both my children at the time, but I started to go a little off the deep end, I guess. I remember specifically around about the time that I started having like PTSD and night terrors, because that became a big part of my life. And I think that because when I got into the car accident and I started taking the medication, it wasn't so much the medicine that I liked. However, it was the alcohol that I could buy on top of the medicine.
Gotcha. Okay. So, yes, you created this numbing agent.
Huh?
You created like a numbing agent, a more consistent numbing agent.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so one thing turned into another, and I found myself doing it often. And so that's kind of what ruined that marriage between me and my third husband, because you know, it just, I abused and abused and abused everything I got. And if I wasn't abusing it, I was selling it. And for crying out loud, I was living with his father. We was living with his dad, who is a police officer. Mm-hmm. And here I am selling, you know, my pain meds. Mm-hmm. You know, but that shows you how, I mean, that's just, wow, why would you do that, you know? So anyhow, so needless to say, that didn't work. And because of the fact that I really felt like that marriage was all my fault, I numbed myself even more. So I started hanging out with the wrong crowds, and I started hanging out with, you know, I got the settlement from that car accident. I got quite a bit of money. I got my own self an apartment. Mm-hmm. I was still seeing my kids off and on, but by this time I had went ahead, and my daughter, I had told her father that, you know, I wasn't able to do it, blah, blah, blah. I was trying to share a joint with my son. And so they ended up, you know, keeping my kids from me, which, to be honest with you, I don't blame them. You know, I don't blame them anymore. You know, I used to blame this on everybody else but myself. But so I started doing heavier things, and I started getting into methamphetamines, and that was my kicker. I started using that drug, and I became a whole nother person. Mm-hmm. I became angrier. My emotions were everywhere. I remember getting so mad one night because I started dating this guy. And he's the one I dated pretty much throughout the madness. And I remember one night I got so mad at him that I took our dresser drawer in the basement, because that's where we was living, the basement of some guy's house with sheets hanging up. It was ridiculous. I took that dresser drawer and I slung it across the room and cut his forehead open. Oh, wow. Yeah, there was another time that he was complaining about the light, and this shows you how insane this drug can make you. I reached my hand up to the light bulb while it was on, and squeezed it.
Oh,
You know,
wow.
yeah, it was really bad. So that's how insane that drug can make you. And it did me. I didn't leave my house. I stayed there in that basement. I did see my son a few times. The last time I saw my son was for his birthday. And I gave my son stolen Jordans. I gave my son a cross that was stolen. Everything I gave my kid was either boosted, was given to me for, you know, trade off on dope, or it was outright stolen by me. So that's everything I gave, and I gave him a lot of stuff that day. And I took him to, I met him secretly from his father out in Glasgow. I called my son and told him that I was in Glasgow and had him sneak out of the house to come see me. You know, we have a lot of regrets in the madness. We have a lot of regrets, things that we wish we could take back, and that is absolutely one of them. But with all of that said, you know, I didn't go out of the house very much. And then one day I went to Cox's Smokers Outlet, and I got caught. I had just ended up selling some, you know, dope, and then I had done some as well. And so I went to Cox's, and I had went to Walmart before that and stole some stuff there, and then went to Cox's. And I was caught shoplifting Jesus keychains and Jesus bumper stickers.
Wow.
Yeah. But anyhow, so I was caught with that, and I had meth. Oh, let me back up real quick, because this is a big part of the story. Before that, the first time I ever tried methamphetamines, I was locked up then. And so I was on the run. With me being out in the other county that I was in, I was on the run at this time. So I forgot to say that. I had went on the run for about 6 months. And so I ended up in Meade County and got locked up there. And that's where the introduction to my journey really starts. I was locked up in Meade County Jail for quite a few months. And I went back and forth to Bullitt County. So I was there for a while. I did quite a bit of time. I did some time in the hole. Quite a bit of time in the hole. I learned a lot from that. At first, I was still not a great person. I was still angry. I was still mean. And actually, I'm still like that sometimes. But
Progress.
way better. But so anyhow, I was locked up for a while, and I went back and forth to Bullitt County, and then I was introduced to something called drug court. Out of both counties, they was giving me drug court, and I had never heard of it before. I had never went to an AA meeting before I was locked up in jail. I didn't know anything about that stuff. So everybody told me how hard it was going to be, and that you can't, like, nobody graduates it, blah, blah, blah. And so, but I wanted to be out of jail. I'm not going to lie. I wanted to get out of jail. And if this was going to get me out of jail, sign me up. And so that's what we did. I got Bullitt County Drug Court. I moved back to Bullitt County, stayed with somebody that, well, we'll just call it what it is. He was a sugar daddy. And so for the first 2 months, and I realized that I didn't want to do this stuff anymore. I did not want to live like that. And I felt so degraded. I felt degraded while I was doing it and high before, but it really was worse now. And this guy was still trying to feed me, you know, pills and all that stuff, was still trying to feed it to me. And I knew that if I drug tested dirty, I was going to go to prison, because at this time I had 3 felony charges. I had 2 possession charges, and I had a flagrant non-sport charge, which was on a diversion. So if I was to get in trouble again, I'm not just going to jail for a little bit. I'm going up the river and behind the fences, you know? So I was minding my P's and Q's, really, and I just didn't want to live like that no more. My whole life, you know, I was a stripper, and I was all of that. And so I didn't want to live that way anymore. And so I went.
I was gonna ask, so is this the first time during this process, Brandi, that you're looking at things with like a new set of kind of eyes? Like, early into drug court, just got out of jail, completely sober at this point, and
Yeah.
looking at things like, oh, what in the heck?
Yeah, I think what I realized how much I had wasted, how much time I had wasted on a drug that just demolished my life.
Okay.
And I didn't know exactly how I was going to do it or how this was going to work, but I knew it had to. I knew it had to work. Not only because I wanted to stop doing drugs and alcohol, but I wanted to be different. I always had this dream of who I was going to be and what type of person I was going to be. And I did not, and what I was looking at was not the person I ever dreamed of. It was my worst nightmare.
Yeah.
So I knew something had to change. And so I went to drug court and I told Aaron and Lena that I wanted to live different. And I told them the truth because they didn't know where I was at or anything. They had no idea like what situation it was. So I told them the truth. And so at this time I was dating a guy, which I shouldn't have been dating a guy, but I was dating a guy. So I moved in with him briefly because that didn't work, and drug court approved it because he was in Bullitt County. And basically I lied to him and told him that he wasn't doing anything either, and he was. So if they would have known that this guy was on Suboxone, I wouldn't have been able to live with him. So I lied to them then. So I was ready, but I was still covering stuff up, and was not being 100% with everybody. So about a month went by, really. It was probably about a month went by, and I had had enough. One, it's too hard to keep lies. It's too hard to cover them up. It's difficult.
Yeah.
So, and me and that guy wasn't getting along because I had the feeling that he was using. And so we stopped getting along, or we stopped being together. So I was at this point working at BP in Brooks, the gas station, and I had met a lady there, which was wonderful, because I didn't have any female friends. I think that's another thing, that when women get into addiction, we don't have female friends. We don't know anybody, any females really. And if we do know them, they're out doing the same thing we are. So I met a female that was sober, that didn't have a drug addiction problem, and was willing to let me rent a bedroom in our house. And I jumped right on it. And I went to drug court and I told them, this is what I'm going to do. Now, right before that, I wanted to leave from the guy's house so bad, that was using the Suboxone and stuff, that I stayed in a hotel during drug court for 2 weeks. And so, and they approved that too. But I started to realize that the more I was being honest about everything, things started happening. I don't know why I did. I don't know none of that, but it did. As soon as I was opening and I was transparent, things started happening that were better. So I got a better job from BP, and I went to work at Frisch's as a waitress. I had never been a waitress before a day in my life, but I did really good at it. So one thing after another, I just started doing what I was supposed to do. I got involved in AA. I got a sponsor, and I had all of that. And then in the middle of that journey, I had a nervous breakdown. And, I don't know why necessarily, but it did. I had a nervous breakdown. I was losing it. So once again, I was honest, and I went to Lena and Aaron, and I told them that my thoughts were not good. I was borderline suicidal at this point, maybe homicidal. And so I went into a place called Well Springs, and got on some medication. I hated the medication. However, taking a breather and taking a look at the fact that, it's okay for me to have issues. It's very normal, actually. My history, anybody's history, really, there's nothing. When you don't address the problems that you had as a kid and you're an adult now, those things will always creep back up. You have to handle business, or your business handles you. And that's in every aspect. And so I started to really take a look at that. And the night terrors started coming back, those kinds of things. And yeah, it was hard, but I admitted myself into Well Springs. And so I stayed there for a little bit. And so that also took me out of drug court for a while. But, I was still in drug court. However, they was just putting my time on hold, you know, so I could go there and get better. Well, so I got out of Wellspring Springs and went back home. And then right after that, come to find out, you know, my stomach, I've always had major issues with my stomach. So I had a complete hysterectomy done. And within that week after the complete hysterectomy, it almost killed me. So I had to go back in because I had holes in my small intestines and all that stuff. It's the whole thing. But so I went back in. And I was scared to death about the medication because they were putting me on fentanyl, for crying out loud. Pain button and everything. I have a scar that's long on my belly now.
Yeah.
But I was really scared about that. That's also where this program comes into play, because by this time I was about 8 months, I guess, into drug court. And it had really done me some good. Oh, I forgot to tell you. When I first got into drug court, I think I was probably in there for 3 weeks, and I failed a drug test for Suboxone. This is before I moved out of that house, okay? I failed a drug test for Suboxone, and that's because I took a Suboxone. So, which is, the reason I point that out is because that's why we're told not to live with with addicts. That's why we're told that, because almost every time one falters, the other one's behind it. Yeah. You know, and so it took me a long time to admit that to drug court, but I did finally. And so I did get in trouble for that. You know, I did have a dirty for alcohol. However, I did not drink alcohol, and I stand by that. But it also goes to show you that you can eat something with alcohol in it and still fail. So, and that's what I did. But so anyhow, through this journey, I've had ups and downs. The biggest thing that has happened is I got my daughter back. My daughter, I didn't see for 10 years. 10 years. And I had tried and stalked her. Hell, I was sending her messages saying I wasn't high and I was high. You know, so that kind of thing. That's how out there we can become. And so, but now today, I'm okay. I do fine. I still have a sponsor. I'm working the steps again. I am a sponsor to 3 people. You know, I was talking, I graduated drug court. I did graduate drug court. And I graduated drug court with who is now one of the best people on the planet. You know, we wasn't supposed to see each other during drug court, but it turns out that I found the love of my life there too. So, but we did it the right way, and we stayed apart the whole time, you know. But my life's good now. I got my daughter back, and so my son still doesn't want to talk to me, and I get that. I understand that. All I can do is stay sober for today, and so I hope as much as I possibly can. My life is busy now. We just started our own company, so that's starting off really good.
That's
I'm doing I'm making my dreams come true, and I'm helping send my daughter to college. I grew up. And the one thing about all of this is that the entire time you're using, you're just a kid. You know, like in your brain, you're still a child. It's so selfish. It's so self-centered. It's so, I grew up, you know, and staying sober is not necessarily easy. However, I work on it every day. I work on it every single day. I still go to meetings. Of course, I still call my sponsor, and, you know, I saw you, you know, things are going well. And my PO, I'll be off probation in November of this year.
Excellent.
Yeah. So, yeah, things have gone well. I've learned a lot for all of this. So,
do you care to talk a little bit, Brandi, about talking to the kids about sort of what that experience has been?
Yeah. Let me grab a drink. Sorry.
Okay.
Talking to the kids was one of the best things about all of this, and I'd still love to do it. You know, we went to Truth or Consequences, which is, by the way, my favorite one. I've been to it, I think, 3 times now, and it's my favorite. And the reason for that is because when you go in front of these kids and you explain to them, when you're just telling somebody about it, they can be kind of confused. But the thing about the truth and consequences is that it breaks it down. It shows you step by step by step how you can get in trouble, what leads you to being in trouble, once you do get in trouble, where you can possibly go after that, the whole nine. You know, and I don't remember. I was telling my story one time at one of the Truth and Consequences one, and there was a little girl that started crying while she was sitting there, and so I went over and sat next to her, and I asked her if she was okay, you know, and you know, these stories are powerful when you stand up in front of them and you tell all of you let your heart out to somebody, you know, of what the things that you've been through, the trauma you've endured, what you've seen to these kids. And then it hit me then how much it impacted young kids. This girl was bawling. I don't know if you remember it, but that little girl was just sitting there just crying her eyes out. And when I asked her, you know, honey, are you okay? You know, that's when we found out that child's mother had just OD'd 4 months. I think it was 4 months prior to that.
Once again now, all over again.
Yeah. You know, and so to see, and she was explaining to us how grateful she was to see, you know, those kinds of things. However, you know, her mom had just died. And she asked me, I don't know why she didn't get it or something like that. And it's one of them things that this disease attacks everybody. It doesn't discriminate on anybody at all. And so it's not just that it was that child's mother or it was me or anybody else, a father or what have you. It attacks anybody and everybody that it's able to. And so, you know, watching these kids and realizing how much they've been through, it makes you look back on the fact that, oh my God, that could be my kid, you know, that's my kid sitting in that audience, you know, and it gave me a better perspective on why my son's so upset, you know, and how it hurt my daughter so much. But the kids I've been given phone numbers. Little girl gave me her phone number one time. I had another little girl at the high school pray with me after I left from there. Tears just hug. And then the job that I just left to do this business was Denny's. And so some of them kids at North Bullitt and at the Truth and Consequences literally come in to see me at Denny's. You know, there's one that I've become very close to her family now. Like, her family's great. I got real close to her grandmother, or her aunt is what it was, because she's raising this little girl because the mom's a drug addict. So she's called me quite a few times just asking questions, you know. And so to see that our community is starting to understand that this is a problem everywhere, that this is a disease that we have to treat, that it doesn't get fixed overnight. You know, it's willingness that we have to have as addicts, and it's a little bit of understanding and willingness that the non-addict has to have, and that we can work as a team with this. And so, yeah, I've enjoyed every bit of going to the schools. That's one of the things that I try not to miss ever. You know, but I mean, COVID's really kind of messed that up, I think, for this go around.
It's been rough.
Nice, yeah. But this kind of thing will be really nice too. We can share with people, but I don't really know what else.
Okay, 2 more questions, rapid fire. Ready for them? Wonderful. First rapid fire question. If you hope that somebody watching this gets one thing from your message, just like walks away with this one overarching thing, like, man, Brandi said blah, or she meant this, what's the one thing that you hope somebody watching our time together walks away with?
Don't ever give up. Don't give up. No matter what happens in life, don't give up. There's a solution somewhere. There is a positive solution somewhere. And if you put it in God's hands, it's going to work out. If you put everything in God's hands, it's going to work out. So that's probably what I'd want to say.
Excellent. Do you have a favorite quote?
A favorite quote?
Yeah.
Yeah, we dress ourselves up to be unseen.
Tell me what that means to you.
That means that a lot of times when people are walking around and they are just from head to toe, because I did this for a long time, that, you know, we're dressing ourselves so that somebody doesn't have to see the hurt and the pain on the inside. So we wear a mask. You know, we wear a mask of happiness, a mask of glowing. And when really deep down, we're hurting, we're dying inside. And that's probably my favorite quote.
Excellent. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on. Like I said, I think, and it's something I kind of keep spinning on the end of these videos. And I think it's true for you and I as well. It's not sugar coated. It's not dressed up. It's literally like you could pass us up in the coffee shop or in my office or at Denny's and hear these conversations. Because I
Right.
think it's important for people to know, like, real people having real conversations about real life. That is the way that this thing flows. And I absolutely love what you said about the teenagers and going to the school, because I also feel the same way. It's like, hey, let me show you my heart so that you know it beats in spite of, or instead of, in spite, girl, my mind is crazy today. That my heart still beats, despite, there we go, trauma, despite consequences. And, you know, one of the things that a lot of those kiddos, I think, hear when you guys get up and speak is, hey, like, I'm a live person who's been where some of you has either been or some places you've experienced,
That's right.
you know, and that you put a face and a person to some of that shame that those kids feel. And I think a lot of times they can look at you and say, well, Miss Brandi said, you know, never give up. Or, you know, she said that this stuff happened to her. This was her experience, but it doesn't define me today. It's just a chapter in this story. And so I think that that's one of the most beautiful messages that you give a lot to not only today's group, but in all of those times that you and I have met together and you've spoken. Um, and I think that's all we can ask for, right? Let me be vulnerable. Let me show you my truth. And what you choose to do it from that point forward, hopefully you connect to it, you can feel that healing, and then we keep moving.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. So.
Beautiful. All right, Brandi, thank you for your time. I'm going to close this out here. Hold on a second.